It's the Creative Blether podcast with your host, Clive Batkin.
Hello, and welcome to instalment 3 of the Creative Blether. As ever, I am your host, Clive Batkin, and it's a delight to have you with me today. I hope you've enjoyed the last couple of episodes. I know I have. I think I'm getting to grips with things in this world of podcasting. As ever, the podcast is available free to listen to everybody, but we do have a Patreon account. So if you'd like to help support the channel, get added content such as a video episode, our access to our after show, which is called the Mithering, where our guests get to offload secret things. And we've got a very good one coming up today. That would be splendid. We've also got some other bonus content and things which will be coming soon. So one thing I've learned from doing the first 2 episodes is that I tend to be overly obsequious when introducing my guests. So I'm going to cut that right out. However, it's still my joy and delight this week to be joined by an old friend and colleague. He's a fantastically talented jeweler, goldsmith. He makes very weird homebrew. He is Mr. Jonas Mace. Jonas, thank you for joining me.
Clive, thanks, man. It's so good to be here. And it wasn't that weird, was it?
Sorry?
The homebrew, it wasn't that weird.
It was extremely weird, yes. Some of it was. Some of it was marvellous. And I lost a couple of days on some of the other ones. But so you're joining me from Munich, which is very exciting.
That's right. I'm in Munich. I'm in Bavaria. I've just moved out here a year ago.
I think that makes you my first, is that intercontinental guest? No, probably not.
Yeah, easy does it. It's just Brexit. You haven't left the continent.
That's true. That's true. And are you enjoying it over there?
Yeah, I like it. It's different. It's a big shock sometimes, and I mean some things are very complicated where they don't need to be, and some things are very simple. But yeah, I like it.
Good. We'll come on to what took you there later on, if we will. So I introduced you as a jeweler and goldsmith. Is that right? Is that how you describe yourself?
Yeah, sure. I tend to refer to myself as a goldsmith because I typically work with gold. And yeah, I work with jewels too, but mainly my job is to make the gold. It's to make the gold pieces. Yeah. So yeah, I make jewelry, mostly rings and earrings and pendants and that sort of thing. With diamonds, pearls, sapphires, rubies, topaz, and tourmalines, you name it.
Sure. And then I know you have a very good Instagram account where people can see the kind of things you make. So we'll give that out a bit later in the show. So tell me your background. Where did it all start? Did you do this at school? Did you always know what you wanted to do? Is it something you've fallen into? Tell me everything.
Well, yeah, I guess, people, when I tell people that I'm a goldsmith, some people say, wow, that's kind of a strange job. How did you get into that? How do you do that? And most people, they do an apprenticeship, but I didn't. But I tend to cite one moment in my young life where I knew that I loved jewelry. And I was about 5 years old, and I was at my mother's friend's house playing, and me and the other kids were playing in this woman's bedroom. I find a diamond ring in her bedroom, just on a side table, and I couldn't stop looking at it. And I stole this ring. So I'm looking at this ring. I'm taking it around with me, and we have to leave this woman's house, and we're driving home afterwards. My mother asks me, "What do you got there? What are you looking at?" And I can't hide it. I can't take my eyes off it. And I show her the ring, and I'm old enough to know better, but I was maybe unable to help myself. I don't know, but I tend to cite that as the beginning of my love for jewelry.
So if you hadn't made it as a jeweler, you would have made it as a safecracker or something.
Yeah. Could have gone one of two ways, right?
Yeah. Still could.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. So where was this? Because obviously you have an accent. So you grew up in America, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, this is in the mountains in North Carolina, where that's where some of my roots come from.
Sure.
But I wasn't born there. I was born about 150 kilometers north of here in Nuremberg.
And how did you go from Germany to America? I mean, that's
Yeah. So, well, I guess it's the same old song and dance. My father was in the military. My mother was a, a German.
right.
Hate to reduce her to that, but yeah, she was German, and so they met here in Germany, and yeah, then we moved to the U.S. and I grew up there. That's why I have an American accent, and I can't speak very good German.
And were they artistic in any way?
No, no. In fact, not not really artistic at all. My father was, but they were very much uh, they were very much kind of opposed to an arts career for me, and
Really?
yeah. So yeah, I can remember when I told my mother that I wanted to go to art school, and she said, "Ach, Jonas." So yeah, it was she was a bit crestfallen, I think, but now she's come around. I think
And so, can I ask, is that because it was perceived as sort of slightly a career which was had instability built into it? I mean, did
that's
they
it.
want you something that had a regular paycheck and all that kind of thing, or?
My my mother is a very talented physician. She's very intelligent and very hardworking, and um, she's at the top of her field. And um, so I had some interest in science as well, and I think she had very high hopes that I would also go into science, and
Sure.
and I initially did, but it turns out after failing chemistry twice, I discovered that maybe it wasn't for me. I was terrible at school. I mean, I think that your parents' hopes for you are always a little bit higher than maybe what is realistic. But I mean, I really struggled in school and I didn't do well. I really had to try hard. I was diagnosed with ADD. I was always in trouble. I was always getting up to mischief and yeah. But I finally found my way to art school and I think that once I got there, I finally felt like I belonged. I felt like I'm doing what I'm good at. I'm doing what I enjoy. But it wasn't a straight shot. There was it was a roundabout way.
And where was the art school? Was that North Carolina as well, or?
No, that was it. Yeah, so that was in North Carolina as well. It was called ECU. It's East Carolina University, and they have a fantastic art school there, and in just a top-notch medals program as well. And I really lucked out. I didn't go to art school to go into jewelry. Initially, I was interested in all sorts of things, drawing and ceramics and uh, yeah, painting to some degree, but yeah, printmaking. But jewelry really kind of called to me because it's really it's the only fine art that has to do with you personally. So you it's the only fine art that you interact with personally. You don't when you see a painting, you stand 6 feet away or something like that. When you see a sculpture, you're not allowed to touch it. So I kind of felt like that jewelry there was something quite personal about it, and that really appealed to me. And being on the skin, yeah. So I think that and the material is what appealed to me.
That's really interesting. I've never heard it described in that way or thought about in that way, really.
Yeah, it's an important part of of being human. Jewelry is. I mean, you communicate with it a lot more than you think, and we communicate. You read people based on it. I mean, and I'm not just talking about perceived wealth and things like that. I'm talking about how you might wear a ring to say that you are not interested in meeting women or men or something like that.
Sure.
To say that you're settled, and you or you might wear certain earrings to indicate that you are interested in meeting other men or women.
Sure.
Yeah,
So did you do, it sounds like you did a sort of foundation course at art. You tried lots of different things. Is that right? Or
that's right. I did. I had so much fun in art school. I did. Yeah. So foundation courses exactly, and I had a really good time there, just exploring and learning about design and learning about what makes art and what design is. And we were kind of pushed in some very funny directions, just to and sort of given free reign to kind of explore different things, which I thought was just amazing. It was the first time in my life where somebody just said, your creativity is a beautiful thing, and I want you to really run with it.
it's my biggest regret that I never went to art school. Seriously, I think, well, I've got a lot of big regrets, but that's up there in the top 10 anyway. So I envy you that.
All right.
So once you've done the foundation, that's at the end of that, you went, right, now I want to specialize in the jewelry and the metal side. And how long did you train for?
So yeah, I had really strong professors at East Carolina University. So a typical program at an art school will have one or two professors, and they might have some experience exhibiting art. They might not. They might just be academics, say. But I had four top-notch professors, and they were all very supportive, very helpful, and they when I was in their classes, I was like, wow, this is a real gold mine here. So it was partly that, but it was also the material. That I wanted to work with the gold. Yeah, I wanted to work with the silver and the stones. That's that's a big part of it too. Yeah, so I kind of homed in on jewelry because it appealed to me. I was good at it, and it was something that I could do. And this is something also important for me. I wanted to have a career, and I didn't see any other real options to to take a career out of art school. A lot of my friends had graduated, and they were amazing painters, amazing printmakers, and they were working in a stable, or they were working who knows where. They weren't working in their field, and so I figured if I'm going to put the work in to learn all this, I want to be able to have a career afterwards. I want to be able to support myself with relative comfort, and yeah, and so I saw jewelry as a means to that end.
Sure. So how long was that training? Was that, like, I guess in here it'd be
It
3 years
was
or
about two
something, but
years for an undergrad degree after the foundation. Um, but yeah, I studied. Yeah, I also did a summer course, and I also did some study through um, just so I found a professional in New York that was teaching a very specific technique that I was interested in. So I went and studied with him
what
for
was that?
there was repoussé, so a technique of low relief in metal, in sheet metal. His name was Valentin Yatkov, and he's a world renowned repousser. Or a chaser, as they're called. And yeah, that was something that I was very interested in. So I studied with him, and yeah, I studied at a craft school called Aramont in Tennessee as well for a little bit over a summer. But this is all art study, you see. So this is not the typical way that you learn jewelry. So what I was learning was art and design, and that's different than being a maker. I mean, it's not the same thing. You know what I mean?
Sure, no, I get the distinction. Sure.
So, I mean, I was training to be an artist, and so when I graduated with a degree in fine art, specializing in jewelry, I was completely unprepared to be a jeweler. I was, I had some of the skills needed, but the main ones I didn't, because it's craft, it's handmade stuff, and you have to know how to use the tools, how to use, you need to know the math, how to do the math for some of for a lot of the work. I mean, a lot of the things that I learned, the most important things that I learned about what I do, I didn't learn in art school.
Sure. I guess conversely, though, there must be some very trained jewelers out there who may be like a greater, I don't know, repairs or resizing or fixing things, but don't have that artistic vision for bespoke work or commissions or.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I learned important things in art school. For example, sketching and drawing. I can bust out a sketch very quickly now, and I can do it in a way that communicates the design perfectly to the client. That's important, and I learned that in
Sure.
art school. And you're right in saying that the people that came up through an apprenticeship, I have an advantage over them in that I do know a lot about design, so I can I can tell you when something is off, and I can tell you why it's off. Whereas, somebody who came up through an apprenticeship may or may not be able to say that. They may be able to say it, but they maybe wouldn't be able to put it into those words. So that gave me an advantage. But the difference that I found was that I was learning something that you use here. Art is in the mind, whereas jewelry is uh, a very physical thing. So it's not just in the mind; it's in the hand. It's on the finger.
Sure. So does that imply that once you'd come out of college, you, I don't know, got your first job in jewelry and thought, hang on, I'm all at sea here. I'm not prepared for this.
Absolutely, I was in the. I mean, and the worst part is I had built up this. They give you this lovely, beautiful gold embossed piece of paper, and it gives you this courage that you shouldn't have. And I even, I referred to myself as a jeweler, and that was a lie. That I mean, I didn't know enough to call myself that, and in fact, I was really hesitant to ever really refer to myself as something like a goldsmith, because like, yeah, the confidence was there, but the knowledge wasn't. So yeah, I came out of university completely unprepared for the jewelry industry. But like I said, that's why most of that, all of my colleagues have done an apprenticeship. I'm the only person that has a, a degree. I have 2 degrees. I have a master's in art as well. And again, that didn't really prepare me for the industry. I mean, I'm glad I have it because I love teaching, and so that gave me the credentials to be a teacher.
Sure.
But no, I was completely unprepared when I came out.
So how did you get through that? I mean, did you just blag your way, or did your your talent for it just shine through, or how did you cope with that?
Well, at university, I took a part-time job with a local jeweler, and I was doing basic repairs, very basic, and I was basically cleaning up after his work. So he would do the difficult stuff, then he'd hand it off to me, and that was really important because I saw what he did. So I was looking at the piece that he had just done, and whether or not I wanted to, I was examining how he did it, and that was really helpful. So I did have some idea of what to do. Yeah, Ellis Cottrell. He was my first master, I guess you could call him. He ran a little shop. It was just him and one other person. He had a couple of part-time, usually jewelry students from the university, and he was a real cool guy. He kept a bottle of vodka tucked up under his bench. So whenever he'd have like a very difficult job to do, he would get he'd be like, "Oh God, I've got to set that opal today," and he'd talk himself up all morning, like, "I've got to set the opal. I'm going to do it at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, come and go. That opal has got to be set by noon. I'm going to set that opal at 11. Opals are very soft, so this is a very difficult job.
Sure.
So 11, come and go. 11:59, he'd get there, and he'd reach under that bench, and he'd grab that bottle of vodka, tilt it back, and go, "Okay." And then he'd get to work. And he'd nail it, of course, but yeah, it was
really. So he needed that Dutch courage to actually do it.
It was for show. He did it. He did it for me to some degree.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, no, he was.
Sounds like something else he taught you to me. The use of alcohol to get through, but we'll talk to that about that later.
No, he had that same bottle for years. So yeah, I think it was a bit of an act, but he was yeah, he had wilder days. He was a roadie for, gosh, I think it was one of these 70s rock bands. What's that band that does that song, "You're as cold as ice"? Is that Foreigner? Yeah, it's Foreigner.
Oh, really? He was a roadie for Foreigner?
Yeah, that's right. And like Three Dog Night and a few other bands. I can't remember. Anyway, he was a wild one.
He sounds a character.
Yeah.
How long were you there for with him?
I was there for, gosh, I guess nearly 2 years. No, not that much. I don't know. Maybe a year and a half. But so in 2008, I graduated, and in the same week, I learned from him that he was unable to keep me because the 2008 crash came, and so
Sure.
the economy took a dive, and so he had to cut back. He could only keep one part timer, and I didn't make the cut, so he let me go. So I graduated and lost my job in the same week, and so I was like, all right, let's see what we can do. So I decided to move to Western Australia.
Was that a crime again, probably? So wise move. So why there? Why Western Australia?
Well, a friend of mine lived there, or was from there, and I lived next to him. We were neighbors. We lived on sailboats off the coast of North Carolina, and he was on the same dock as me, and yeah, so we met that way, and he was from Perth, Western Australia, and he said, "Oh, you ought to come visit me, mate." So I did some little research on Western Australia. Turns out they have a lot of gold, and they have pearls, and they have diamonds. So I was like, this is a place for me. So I called him up one day and said, "Hey, I'm interested in coming to visit." He said, "Well, you could rent the spare room out. We've got a spare room." So I bought a ticket and got a visa, and yeah, off I went.
With no job at the time, I'm guessing. No job in Australia.
No, and I had a lot of different jobs in Western Australia because of my visa. I wasn't able to work in one spot for very long. They make you move from job to job to keep the Australians competitive. Us immigrants are always taking the jobs, Well, I did lots of different things, from working in restaurants to painting to teaching, and and then I finally landed a job at Western Australia's top jeweler there, with a place called Linney's. So so you were asking about how you kind of how you get a leg up and how you get started.
Yeah.
This is what worked for me. Okay, the jewelry work that I had was not good enough. It wasn't good enough to get me a look in. So I didn't even bother with it. Instead, I found some of my other work, which happened to be repoussé, that was the strongest. So the stuff that showed the strongest design, the strongest art, that looked the best, and also the best looking photographs that I had. And I brought those in, and I just, I kept trying to work up the courage to go into this jewelry shop, Linney's, and I would, I really suffered in those days from lack of courage, and I really doubted myself. Um, but a girl I had met, she said, when I asked her when she asked me what I did, I told her that I was a jeweler, and she said, well, where do you work? And I said, well, I'm working as a waiter. And she said, well, you're not really a jeweler, are you? And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. That was kind of a blow, but yeah, she was right, and so that kind of made me think, yeah, I've got to do this now. I've got to apply for a job in my field. I've got to do what I love, and so I walk into this showroom, and this is a really high end jeweler, and I just unbeknownst to me, there was a show happening there that day. So there's all these high and mighty folk from the local area, and they were all viewing this very expensive jewelry. There was a pink diamond tiara worth like 30 million in there and stuff. Like, it's just mind blowing stuff. And there's Alan Linney. Mr. Alan Linney is there in the showroom. I didn't recognize him. So I walk in and I'm like looking around, and this security guard comes up to me and he goes, "Can I help you, sir?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm here to apply for a job with Mr. Linney." And the security guard turns around and goes, "Hey, Alan, this guy's here to see you." So Alan Linney walks over and he goes, "Yes." And so I just like jump into it. I show him my work. I say I wanna work for you, and he ends up liking it. I was so nervous. I was stuttering half the time, but yeah, I showed him the work and he liked it. And he said, "I'm not going to say yes, but come back on Monday morning." And so I walk out of the shop floating on air, and I'm looking in the shop window and I can see my reflection in it. And right here on my cheek, I've got some jam from my breakfast. So my advice would be to make sure you have jam on your cheek if you're going to go for an interview. It seemed to work for me.
I love that. Can I just say, I mean, that story amazes me because I think of you as so confident and so sort of, you know, uber at the top of your game, that it staggers me that you weren't always like that, and you had the sort of imposter syndrome that so many of the people I've talked to also have. But that staggers me.
Well, yeah, I think that you hear me in teach mode because when we worked together, it was when I was teaching, I think. So, and when you're teaching, you really only have to be an hour ahead of your students, so you can blag it.
Yeah, but I've not just seen you teach; I've seen you work, and I mean, I know, you know, to me, you have mastery over what it is you do. So obviously, everybody starts somewhere, but I'm just surprised that. But also, other things I know about you in your life, I'm surprised you had that hesitancy to go in and chat to somebody, and really, that's really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, I think everybody deals with that to some degree. I don't know. I think, yeah, you've got to find a way around it. And
Sure.
what works for me might not work for everybody, but yeah.
So, how many years were you at Linney's?
I was only there for 6 months. I was only allowed to work
Oh,
there for 6 months, um, and then I had a couple of projects that I didn't finish, but I ended up just volunteering there because I wanted to finish these pieces. So they employed me to do repousse, which is a very niche style of art, um, and it was a really cool thing to do. So Alan Linney basically said to me, "Come up with some designs, and we'll make some pieces." And he gave me, so for example, one of the maybe my favorite piece that I did there for them was this Baroque pearl. So Baroque pearl is like a kind of misshapen, funky looking pearl, come in all sorts and shapes and sizes, and this one looked like the torso of a woman.
right.
And the theme of the Linney's collection that year was dancing. So he wanted me to use this pearl to to make a dancer out of. So use the pearl as a body, and then repoussé the rest of the body out of platinum and yellow gold. And so I did that one, and it was a pendant. It was quite a large piece. The pearl itself was as big as the end of my thumb. It was, I can't remember. I think it was something like 50, 60, 70 carats. I can't remember exactly, but it was huge. And that was, I mean, the idea that I got to work with a piece like that straight out of school, it was terrifying, but it was very exciting as well. And he gave me a few other projects to do, and some rings, and I did it all with repoussé. So this technique, this kind of niche technique that nobody really does in jewelry, I got to use top-notch materials to do it in. So I was repoussing in, I was chasing out of gold, and I was repoussing in platinum, and I was putting these big diamonds in it, and just nobody else was doing that with repoussé. Any of the other chasers that I knew. So sorry, I'm kind of using the word chaser and repousser interchangeably. They're the same thing.
Okay.
But so they were all working in silver or even brass or bronze, occasionally in small pieces of gold. So it was a really lucky break for me.
I mean, to work in platinum, because again, to any listener out there doesn't know, I mean, it's a particularly tricky metal to work in, isn't it? If I understand correctly.
That's right. Yeah. I only chased the one piece in platinum, but it was tough. It didn't want to cooperate. Now, gold, on the other hand, that is the perfect material.
I remember you saying to me once that I think you said you could work in gold all day and it would always do what you wanted.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember saying that to me, but
yeah. Gold is it's the noble metal. It really is. There's there's an opera by this guy called Berlioz, and it's about this fella named Benvenuto Cellini, who was a 15th century goldsmith in Italy, and it's about his life. And there's this one particular song in there where Cellini is he's with his apprentices and with his workmen, and he's telling them how great their job is and how lucky we are to be goldsmiths. And the song goes something like, God gave all artists the material to work with and produce their art, and to the painter he gave pigments, and to the sculptor he gave marble, but he saved the king of materials for the goldsmith, and that's gold. And this is all sung in like very grandiose style, and he's just like a love affair with gold. And yeah, I think, but
that's
I really
wonderful.
It is. I mean, and for someone who works with gold to hear that, it was like it was a verification.
Sure. So again, for the listeners, there are obviously different colors and carats of gold. Do you have a favorite to work with? Do you just love it all?
Well, I love yellow gold. I think it's such a warm color, such a warm feel to it. It's also, to work with, it's the friendliest because the copper content is low. So the alloy is kind of perfectly balanced to be strong but giving, and so it stays relatively clean when you heat it. You can melt it down again and again, whereas something like, for example, rose gold or white gold, these are a little bit, the alloys there are a little bit more difficult to work with. I do like white gold as well, but it's not really white. It's a little bit yellow. It's just a hair yellow.
Right.
And it's always got to be plated with a substance called rhodium, and that gives it that kind of icy white look. Now, platinum has that icy white look to begin with. It's even icier, that cold white, whereas white gold kind of has a warm white. So, yeah, I mean, platinum also is a wonderful material because it's so strong. I mean, if you have a platinum ring, it'll probably outlast you. Whereas a gold ring, you might have to replace it after 70, 80 years.
Most things are going to outlast me, to be honest. So my mate said the other day, don't start any long books, but that's
No.
another story. But interesting. Okay, thank you. That was a fantastic summation for people that don't know about the different metals. So after that, what did you do? Because I obviously met you in England. So how did you get from? I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but how did you get from
So you were
Australia
the
to?
girl that took me down a notch and said I wasn't a jeweler.
Oh,
Yeah, so I ended up moving to England with her, and she's now my wife. But so yeah, you know Alex.
I was going to say, is this the lady that became your wife? But
Yeah. No, she. Yeah, so she's from Devon, and we had visa problems. We both moved to Australia with the intent of staying, or at least considering the idea of staying, and we loved it out there. We wanted to stay, but we couldn't get visas. I was there for 18 months, and she was there for 2 years. Uh, and it came time that our visas were expiring, and um, yeah, so we had to either stay or go. So one fine day, we went into the visa office because mine was expiring the next day, and so we're like, "Look, I want to try to stay in longer. Is there anything we can do?" And luckily, we just happened to come upon a visa officer who had just returned from a couple of weeks in Bali, so she was in a very good mood, and she said, I'm in a good mood. I'm gonna give you 10 months." So I I got 10 month a 10 month holiday visa, so I wasn't allowed to work.
sure.
But for resourceful people, there are ways around this. Maybe delete this part.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe this is not the part. But again, your good luck. You seem to attract good luck in these situations. That's the second good luck story. So
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, yeah. So I got a 10 month visa. So I because I didn't want to leave Australia. At this point, I was head over heels for this woman. So I didn't want to give up. So and she had another 6 months on her visa. So or even a year, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so when my visa finally ended, I found a school in London that I studied a master's at. That I could study a master's at, and I moved to London, and she followed a few months later, and we moved to London, and I started studying at London Metropolitan.
what were you studying there?
I was studying applied art, so again, jewelry. Um, it was it was basically me writing about um, ideas behind jewelry.
Sure. And your wife, Alex, so she's a creative as well, isn't she? Is she a film
That's right.
director,
Yeah,
something like
she
that?
is indeed. Yeah. So she was working in television. In Australia, she was working at the ABC. In England, she worked at the BBC, and then and Channel 4 and the other programs. She was making documentaries. That's right.
So again, when I met you, I think you had your own business in Hatton Garden, the jewelry centre in London. How is that where you went after your college course in London?
Yeah. After my masters, I got a job in Hatton Garden at a jeweler's, and because I didn't have any work experience in England, nobody trusted me, and that's something I really encountered a lot of a mistrust for immigrants. And I mean, to be fair,
Sure.
jewelry is it's based on trust. You're working with very expensive material, so you need to trust the person you're employing. I couldn't find work very easily after I graduated, and there was a few months where I couldn't find any work, and I was pretty bummed. But finally landed a job as a polisher. So this is the dirtiest job in the industry, and it's kind of an unsung job, but it's a very important part. So,
Sure.
and I just decided that I was going to be the best polisher in Hatton Garden, and I really applied myself to, this is what I've got. I'm gonna do it, and I did it, and I was very good at polishing. I don't recommend it, but it got me a foot in the door.
You polished for a very well-known firm. I don't know if you're allowed to say who they are, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I won't. Yeah, so the firm that I worked for is now dissolved, so it doesn't matter anymore. So I was doing all the polishing for Tiffany in
sure.
in South England. I think I was polishing all of their repairs and all of their.
And they have a very high standard, don't they, of
They do,
the
and
finish
the
required?
thing is that at that time Tiffany was doing a lot of silver work, and silver is particularly difficult to polish because it scratches so easily. And Tiffany, having such a high standard, want absolutely no scratches when they hand that over to the client. So that means silver is so soft it'll scratch on paper. So paper will scratch silver. So you have to wrap it in special tissue that they supply. Yeah, it was complicated work, and they were really into charm bracelets. Bracelets are very difficult to polish, uh, but yeah. So I was polishing their work, and then I finally convinced my boss to put me on the bench. Then I was repairing all of Tiffany's, doing all of Tiffany's repair work. But yeah, that was when I was employed, um, and then I did finally leave there and started my own one man band in Hatton Garden. Yeah, that's when we met.
Sure. And like all us freelancers, it has highs and lows, and the instability of finding work and getting work done on time and all that sort of thing. Was that something you enjoyed or didn't enjoy, or?
Clive, I don't know how you do it, man, but some people can do it. You're one of them, and I'm one of the ones that can't. Like that I found that so very difficult. I was spending probably one day a week doing paperwork and generating, maybe even more than one day, just generating work. So just calling around, meeting up with people, beating a drum, just trying to get myself onto the bench just to have enough work to keep the bread coming. It was tough. It was very difficult. And I remember so a typical Monday would go like this. I would come in to my bench. I would sit down at the bench. And I would look at the jobs that I have in this lockbox, and I would say, okay. If there wasn't anything in there, I would start picking up the phone and I would call my clients and I'd be like, "Hey, do you have anything for me?" Because I had several people that I would do work for, and um, I'd call them all up, go through my Rolodex or whatever, and if but a lot of times I get to the end of the Rolodex without any work.
Sorry, Grandad, you're what?
Sorry, a Rolodex, sort of kind of all your contacts.
I remember what it is, but
Yeah, sorry. So it wasn't an actual Rolodex. It was some loose leaf pieces of paper with some numbers on it. But yeah, so I would be, then it would be like 11 a.m. and I'd sit there and I go, no work. And then I would just, get worried for a few minutes, kind of fret and worry and be like, how am I going to pay the bills? What am I going to? And then I'd stop and I'd go to the British Museum.
Or the pub, I thought you were going to say, to be fair.
Well, I would also go to the pub sometimes. No, I had plenty of opportunity to go to the pub. Anyway, in Hatton Garden, everybody wants to meet up at a pub. So if I was ever if I'm ever going to drop anything off, like meet up with a setter so I get someone to set the stones for me, because that's a very different job than a goldsmith, a setter.
Sure.
And then I'd be like, okay, well, can I pick it up? Well, meet me at the pub in a half an hour. Okay, meet him at the pub. So I meet my setter there. Do you want a drink? Yeah, go on then. So this is for all of the people that I'm meeting for work. To deliver to a client. Let's meet at the Hatton Tun, or let's meet at the Argyle.
So you're sitting there in a pub with like a packet of gold and diamonds and all sorts of things.
Yeah, but it's good. I think it's good. It's a good way of doing business. I think
Sure.
it's kind of a neutral ground. It only costs what does a pint cost in London now?
About £47,
Yeah,
I
okay,
think.
so, which is cheaper than like a hot desk in in one of these businesses,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But yeah, it was good. But I did see the inside of a lot of Hatton Garden pubs, which, by the way, Hatton Garden has a lot of nice and very very excellent pubs.
So now we met in your job after that, and then recently you've now moved again, and I say you're in Munich. So how did that come about?
I so I'm from Germany. I was born here. My mother's German, and my family is half of them are anyway. And so I had always entertained the idea of living in Germany. When I was born, I spent 6 months here, and then my family moved to the U.S. So it was always growing up in the U.S. I always kind of felt like an immigrant because my friends would come over to hang out or something, and my mother would be cooking some German dish, and they'd be like, "What's that smell?" And they say things like, why can't your mom cook normal food or something like so I felt very much an immigrant even in the US. But then I moved here, and I'm like, no, I'm still very much an immigrant. But yeah, I always wanted to see what it was like in the US, and I wanted one of my children to learn German. I found a good job here, so it was it was time for a change.
Do you still have family in Germany?
I do, yeah. I've got grandparents and aunt and uncle and a cousin here.
Sure. And you moved, I mean, a bit before COVID, didn't you?
Yeah,
Has that how has that been over there?
when I moved, COVID had just been discovered in China, so it was kind of like, well, hope that doesn't reach us. But um, yeah, it was a funny time because normally when you move to a new place, you want to meet people, and I found it very difficult. We found it very difficult. I mean, moving to a different country with children is always difficult. I've got two, and it's very difficult with children because it's hard. You can handle the stress on yourself, but when the stress of a move like that affects your children, that really hits home. That really hurts. I can remember.
Sure.
I can remember my son saying to me, "I want to go back to England. I miss England. I miss home." And that was about 2 months in, and up until then, I had held it together just fine. But it was very tough, and
That's hard, isn't it?
when he said that, it nearly broke me down because I didn't. That's not why we moved. That I didn't want to move to make a hardship on my family. I didn't. The idea was to gain a work-life balance that we didn't have in England, and now we've more or less achieved that. But in the first year is always very tough.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But they're settled now. They
Yeah,
love it now.
absolutely. Yeah, and both of them have got friends here, and they view it as home now. It's bizarre how quickly they just they take to it.
Sure.
But yeah, Munich is an interesting town. So it's one of the top jewelry cities, I think. Um, so there's Schmuck, which is a big meeting for a convention for jewelers, and there's also Inargenta, and there's some other smaller ones here as well. And those two, so the top three or four jewelry conventions in the world are going to be Basel or Hong Kong. Those are probably the biggest, and then Schmuck and Inargenta, and two of them are in Munich. So it's a very important town for jewelry, and as a result, it attracts a lot of talent here.
Sure. So you're definitely in the right place. You're
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing is, it's a very wealthy city, and so people have money to spend, which was good over the COVID time because Yeah, thank God people are still buying diamonds. The wealthy seem to be getting wealthier, right?
Sure, absolutely. Same here. So, are you allowed to say who you work for in Munich? Can you
Yeah,
give them a
sure.
plug? Or
Yeah, I work for Juwelier Ralph Nutt, or so his name is Ralph Nutt, and he is a designer and a diamond trader and jeweler, and we do a lot of very traditional stuff. We do a lot of contemporary stuff, and I'm one of 6 goldsmiths, and then there's some other employees too, a setter in house, and really state of the art workshop. And so, I mean, laser. We just got some casting in, so it's a very exciting place to work because I'm really on my toes. My colleagues are very talented, and uh, we're really doing some interesting things with CAD, computer aided design, and casting. Yeah, so I'm very pleased to be here.
that's wonderful. You must send me the web link to that firm, and I'll stick it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do.
And if people want to see your stuff, your personal work, as I say, I know you have an Instagram account. How do they find you so they can see
Yeah,
the
so
quality of the
Instagram
stuff you
is
do?
where I'm posting it, and I'm pretty active on there. And there's only one Jonas Mace, and that's me.
Okay. Well, again, I'll put that in the show notes so people can find you. Mate, this has been wonderful. I'm very conscious we're at 50 minutes, so probably we need to go. We also need to we're going to have a bit of a longer chat for our special bonus content called the Mithering, and I know you're going to tell me about this charity setup of a workshop you did in a very interesting country. So there's so much more we could talk about, and I love having you a friend. I love your approach to things. So um, could you face coming back at some point, and we'll continue the
Yeah, it'd be a
conversation.
pleasure.
Good, wonderful, mate. Thank you so much. As I say, we're going to go and have a bigger chat. To everybody else, thank you so much for listening. And if you want more, do get in touch. Join our Patreon, Instagram, all those kind of things. Mate, thank you so much.
Thanks, Clive. Bye bye.
The Creative Blether.